Welcome to Ocean Stories, a podcast about the people doing incredible things in, on, and around our oceans. I'm your host, Lydia Carey, and I believe in the power of stories to save our seas. Hello, everybody. What's up? What's going on? Welcome back to Ocean Stories. Today's episode is about diving and swimming with sharks for fun, but also as a career. Today, we're talking to Kaitlyn McQueeney. She is a wildlife guide and a shark conservationist. She works as a shark diver, guide. She's also a marine biologist. I found her on Instagram through her amazing underwater photography, and I got to know her in our lovely chat where she shares some information about how she got into this career. So if you're interested in diving with sharks or working in the marine tourism industry, Kaitlyn shed some light on that. She also talks about some interesting things, sort of about how the shark diving industry protects the sharks in Florida specifically, which was completely new information for me that I really enjoyed learning about. The shark diving industry is a billion-dollar industry that generates a lot of revenue for local economies and can actually protect the sharks. If the economy is making enough money off of tourism, then people will have more incentive to protect the sharks rather than hunt them for food or kill them for other reasons. ScienceDirect.com told me that nearly 600,000 people participate in shark diving each year, and that number is expected to double in the next 20 years as it becomes a more popular tourist activity. It can raise awareness about the threats that sharks face, it can create a connection to sharks so that people don't fear them as much and have more of an incentive to contribute to their conservation. Obviously, some shark diving operators use controversial practices like feeding the sharks to increase the likelihood of shark sightings. In some places, it's pretty well known that the shark diving operations are sort of unethical. They crowd the sharks, they bait them around, they make the sharks dependent on their feeding. So it's really important that when you are choosing a shark diving company, that you look for transparency, you look for certifications, and a company that prioritizes your safety, but also that it's an ethical, safe dive for the sharks themselves. We do have a few other shark episodes if you are interested in listening. About 8 months ago, we talked with Christina Zanato about shark behavior, her life study of sharks, how she fell in love with them, how she's connected to them, and her underwater cave exploration expeditions in the Bahamas, which is super interesting. We also chatted to Taylor Cunningham, who is another shark dive guide and photographer, about the fear and fascination surrounding these crazy creatures. And finally, we also talked to Scuba Dan about some of his shark encounters and his crazy life stories in one of our first episodes. Well, actually not finally, because I completely forgot that we also talked with none other than Kat Sharks about her life as a shark ecologist and wildlife connoisseur. She is always traveling and doing these amazing things with sharks and whales and other animals. So if you like sharks, we have lots of episodes ranging from how to have a career with them, to how to study them, to how to dive with them. I just wanted to point that out for all the shark lovers in the audience because our shark episodes are some of our most listened to and best performing episodes, so I know that a lot of you are out there. Let's get into today's episodes with Kaitlyn, and as always, thank you for listening. Hello,
Okay.
Kaitlyn. Welcome to Ocean Stories, and thank you for coming on.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm super excited to talk to you about just your career, and you studied marine biology, I think, and you do shark diving as per your name on Instagram, and you also take photos, like beautiful photography of underwater stuff, so I'm excited to dive into all those topics, but first, I would like to know, where are you right now?
I am currently in Central Florida, so I live in Central and South Florida. South Florida is one of the best parts of the world for shark diving, so that's what brought me here.
Are you from Florida originally?
I actually grew up in New Hampshire, in southern New Hampshire, just outside Boston. Cape Cod, Massachusetts is a hot spot for great whites. That's part of the reason that my passion for sharks originated. And then when I graduated college, I moved, about 3 weeks after graduating college, I moved to South Florida to pursue a career with shark conservation.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey as a conservationist, a wildlife guide, how you got into all of that, and sort of what you're doing now?
Yeah, so this field is very specific and it's not one that you just like wait around for an interview and apply for a job and interview. It's really competitive and it's really all about who you know. So since I was 12, sharks have been my favorite animal, and I just got really interested in learning about their biology, their ecology, what they do for the ocean, how they keep the oceans healthy, and then went to school for marine biology. And I realized that when I was about uh, like halfway through high school, I realized that a lot of people think sharks are man eaters. And so that kind of set my passion along the course of I want to take people shark diving and show them how they really are and how these animals really are. They're not like bloodthirsty killers that you see in Hollywood movies. They're just very intelligent, curious animals that still demand respect, but they are just kind of want to check us out and see what we are. So my dream job since I was a kid was to take people shark diving. And then the photography aspect kind of kicked in a little bit later because a lot of those people wanted photos of themselves with the sharks, and then that sends the message. My photos that I take of people diving with sharks sends the message to other people, their family members, their friends, that sharks are not man eaters, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do this.
I really like the mission and the messaging behind that. I'm curious
Yeah.
about your first time in the water with sharks, or how that progression sort of happened from studying marine biology to where you are now, helping other
Okay.
people swim with them.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a crazy story, just a lot of luck involved. It was about the end of my first semester of freshman year of college, and my parents actually won a raffle that they won a trip to one of the Caribbean islands. And my mom and I had gotten scuba certified a couple of years prior to this. So for Christmas, they surprised me and said, "Hey, why don't we go shark diving?" And I had never seen my favorite animal like in the wild before. So, just because they entered a raffle and won, we were able to go to the Caribbean island, and that was my first shark dive, which was December of 2011. And I love it because not only was it my first time seeing my favorite animal, but my mom was right by my side. So that was huge. That just made it all the more special. I just fell in love with them all over again. I was like, they're even more beautiful in person than just on, because growing up in New Hampshire, I'd only seen them um like in biology books or on television for documentaries. I've never seen them in the wild. So the fact that my parents won that raffle and brought me for that amazing trip, and I got to see them for the first time. And ever since then, I've been hooked.
After you graduated from studying marine biology, how did you get into the role you are now? Did you enter immediately or?
So my first job after graduation was actually a aquarium and marine biology internship through the Walt Disney Company. So I got to help with their rescued sea turtles and their eagle rays and sharks in the big Epcot aquarium, which is like 2 million gallons or five million gallons. Because again, growing up in New England, it's all aquarium science up there. So I had to kind of push myself to get into the ocean side and the shark diving side. So that job brought me, or sorry, that internship brought me to Florida. When I finished that internship, while I was there, I actually met one of the divers at the aquarium, and he was a scuba instructor. And he said, "Hey, if you want to do this professionally, go shark diving professionally, take people out diving, you have to get these couple certifications through scuba, so rescue and dive master." So I joined him on several of his classes. He got me certified to a professional rating, and he connected me with some of his people out in West Palm Beach. I just made connections and talked to people and said, "Hey, this is like what I want to do for my career." And I did get some luck involved, but I just kind of connected with people, kept in contact with people, showed them my photography, and said, "Hey, I really like to work on your boat." And it ended up working out. So I was just a little persistent and said, "Hey, I want to help you take people shark diving," and they loved that. So that's how it all started.
For me, I think it might be a little bit nerve-wracking to imagine, one, just swimming or diving with sharks, but two, it would be even more nerve-wracking for me to take other people and be sort
Yeah.
of responsible for their safety. How do you approach that?
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I did spend quite, it was like maybe 1 or 2 years of shark diving myself just to know their behavior instead of just jumping right in and having people trust me. I wanted to build my own experience, study their behavior, study their body language, get lots of experience with different species. So a lot of the different shark species behave differently. Once I got certified to a professional rating, and then did several years of shark diving, then that's when I was kind of like interning on some of the boats. Once I was fully certified and good to go, then they hired me. So
In a nutshell, what are some of the most important safety tips that you tell people who you are bringing out with you on these tours?
so every single charter, I do give a safety briefing, a detailed safety briefing. So I talk about what we possibly could see, which species, But most importantly, I talk about like shark diving 101, shark safety 101. And there are some universal guidelines to peacefully coexist with these animals. So I do say like they're not harmless puppies, like a lot of people say on social media. They do demand respect. They are apex predators. If you don't take this seriously, that's when something can happen. So we do have to take this seriously. A lot of trips, or every trip, I say eye contact and body language are the most important. So eye contact, sharks actually look in your eyes to see if you're paying attention to them. And more importantly, if you're not paying attention to them. You have to look at every shark. Also, don't hyperfixate on one shark because you might have three behind you. Keeping your head on a swivel, watching your 360, just making sure you're paying attention to every shark in the area tells them, hey, we're peacefully coexisting, but I'm in charge here. I see you all. Don't try anything. Because they can be a little bit sneaky and a little bit temperamental. So you have to kind of hold your ground and use body language. Sometimes I square up my shoulders. If one shark comes in challenging me, I kind of square up my shoulders. So body language, you use your shoulders to follow them too. You don't want a shark to go like behind you because that's your vulnerable side. And they know that. They're so smart. So you have to actually use eye contact for every shark around you and then use your shoulders to follow the shark to say, hey, like we can interact, but you're not getting behind me. So some days is easier, some days is really difficult. I've met some sharks, even the same species. It's really about the individual. Lemon sharks, their reputation is they're very docile. They're pretty easy. But over the years, I have had a couple days where I met a lemon shark that was way worse behaved than a mako shark. So you can't just like look at a species and be like, oh, it's lemon sharks, I'm good. You have to, like, you never can let your guard down. You have to make sure you're on 100% ready for them. Because they know when you're not, like, they know when you're complacent. They wait for you to kind of let your guard down. So it can be an adventure out there.
Yeah, and they're super smart, so it's
Yeah.
important to just always be aware. It makes sense.
Yep.
We have actually talked to two other, I hope I'm not forgetting a third, two other shark biologists, shark diver people on this show. One is Taylor Cunningham, and the other is Christina Zanato, super famous for
Okay.
diving
Yeah,
with the
I've
sharks, and
met
both
both
of
of them.
them. Yeah, and they're both in the
Yeah.
Bahamas. And something that we talked to both of them about was sort of how important it is to connect people to sharks because there's so much misinformation about who they are. They were both super passionate about this huge misrepresentation of a shark's demeanor in the media and how that contributes to people not really caring about how widely threatened they are by humans, whether that be killing them for food or just all of the different human threats that sharks face. And how important it is for people to see sharks online or to dive with them in a different lens so that people can sort of see them in a new light. Related to that, we talked about how important it is for people to find ethical and safe dive operations.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, what should people look for when they're looking for like a reputable, safe, good way to swim with sharks? Or this could apply to other wildlife too, like whales.
Yeah, so I recommend when people are researching what charter to go with is how many years the charter's been in business and how many years of experience their crew has. And in addition to that, how many species have they interacted with? Because I would rather go out as a guest on a boat that's been with the Florida sharks, bulls, lemons, tigers, hammerheads for like 10 years than a brand new business who's only done like lemon sharks for one season. Because then if a tiger shows up, are they trustworthy to keep that tiger interaction safe for me and the rest of the guests? Because like I said earlier, every shark individual, not just the species, are so different. So I get asked that a lot, like, how many people have been bit on your charters? How many times have you been bit? Which both answers are zero. Because I don't let pride and ego get in the way of that. I have in my whole career only twice I've had to actually remove people and myself out of the water. Both times were in Hawaii for oceanic white tip sharks, which is one of my favorite species, but they have a fiery personality. So it's human safety and shark safety are priority. So if I see that that's compromised in any way, it's not worth it, and I'll get people out of the water. We can wait for the shark to calm down. But yeah, 2 different days in Hawaii, the shark just wouldn't calm down, so I had to remove people out of the water, and which they didn't argue with. They're like, yeah, that's the right call. But you have to do the right research to make sure you go out with the right people, because all it takes is one incident, and then like, so if someone gets bit on one of these new boats out here, then the whole state of Florida could be like, okay, for liability reasons, we have to shut all this down. which would be disastrous because then the only humans that sharks would see are fishermen trying to catch them, because it is unfortunately illegal to catch sharks in Florida. So that's a huge weighted responsibility that we feel as operators and dive masters, is that we have to make sure everything's 100% safe, to make sure that the guests are safe and then the sharks stay protected. So that's huge. It's like that's something I think about every single day when we leave the harbor.
That's really interesting. I had no idea that catching sharks was legal in Florida.
It depends on the species. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, they have a very informative website, easy to navigate, and their website says, you know, which species are prohibited from catch, which species are allowed to catch, but how, like the quota, how many. And then if you have the right permit, you can actually shore fish for sharks, which is a whole other thing. The shark ecotourism here, it's not just about putting people on a boat and putting them in the water to see sharks. It's a whole mission here that we're showing that sharks are worth more alive than dead. We're trying to show the state of Florida that the sharks that you have in your waters bring so much to the local economy. That happened in the Bahamas. There's so many beautiful, incredible shark encounters and opportunities in the Bahamas. And in 2011, they established a shark sanctuary. You can't fish, fin, catch, nothing. Like sharks are fully protected there since 2011. So Florida is nowhere close to that, but one can dream. I say that in my like debriefing on the way back from every trip, is like, you guys are helping support our mission to show that like, we want to come out here. People are paying a lot of money for hotels, restaurants, and the boat trips to support local divers in the professional diving community, that we want to go out and see sharks. That's huge. So that's what I've been a part of for the last like 6 or 7 years.
You mentioned that people sometimes come on and they automatically assume that people have been bitten before, or that you have been bitten before. Are there any other misconceptions that you find people have about sharks before they've dived with them?
I've had a lot of people approach me on the boat and they're like, oh, you know, I cut my finger yesterday and I have a band-aid. Like, are they going to smell the drop of blood in an Olympic swimming pool? All of that. And I'm like, so I get a lot of questions like that. Like, am I 100% safe to get in the water? And I'm like, yes, they actually don't, they don't care about a little cut finger or anything. So, yeah, it's more about their reputation. I've even had people that love sharks that come out on the boat and they're like, oh, I would love to see a lemon or a bull, but I don't want to see a tiger. And I'm like, well, I have no control of that over that. And the ocean shows us what she wants to show us that day. I said, you know, if a tiger shark shows up, all you guys have to do is get a little bit closer together as a group and let me handle the rest. I'm the one working as safety diver.
How did you first get into the photography aspect of it?
I went to school for marine biology. I've always wanted to study them through college and everything. I actually had the opportunity to study abroad in Bermuda for coral reef and sponge biology and ecology, and I just happened to bring a GoPro. I bought a GoPro just for the sake of like documenting stuff for the research project out in Bermuda. Suddenly realized how much I enjoyed taking pictures of the reef, of the little critters on the reef, like the nudibranchs, the sea stars, the sponges, the brittle stars. And some people in my group, in my study abroad group, were also like, hey, that's a really good photo. Like, can I use that for my project, like my presentation? So I just I've always been a little bit of an artsy person. I've always loved to draw and create art. And so I have a couple photographers in my family as well. So they kind of inspired me with that. I bought my first like underwater setup in 2017 and just started taking pictures of people with sharks before I was hired as a professional and I was still trying to get my personal experience with these animals. I would bring my camera along and people were like, oh my God, I love that photo of me with a lemon shark. Like, I can't wait to show my family. So it encouraged people through social media, but also personally to come out with us. And people weren't like super excited to go shark diving. Like, if their family member booked it and they weren't like super keen on it, I would say, hey, if you get in for just 10 minutes, I'll get a photo of you with a shark so you can bring that home. And that would like sell it. So it's just an inspiration thing, because then they can go home and show their friends and family, hey, like, these are not monsters. These are not like man killers. They are beautiful animals. And here's me swimming with one, like without a cage or anything.
I really like that you talked about sort of checking your ego during the dives, because I think it would be thrilling and a really cool experience, but there's also a need to like tame your excitement and respect the ocean and respect the coolness of the animals and not get carried away in your skills. Even as like a super skilled person, I think it would kind of be easy.
Complacency can be a dangerous thing, especially in my line of work. I was a lifeguard part-time for like a couple years, so same thing. As soon as you become complacent, that's when an accident can happen, and you don't want to let your guard down. So you can have an ego on land and on the boat, but as soon as you get in the water with a 14-foot tiger shark, like it humbles you real quick. You're like, oh, I'm not as invincible as I think I am. That shark is huge, and if she wanted to do something, I have to like stand my ground and stand up for myself. Even if we have easy sharks that are kind of keeping their distance, they're not doing a whole lot, I have to help people swim back and forth from the boat because their mask is bothering them or something. So there's a lot going on in the water some days, especially with new people that are not locals. A lot of people come out on the boat and it's their first time in the ocean ever. So not only are they getting used to the saltwater taste in their eyes, and they also can't see the bottom, now they have sharks around them and they've never snorkeled. So we try to give them a little bit of like a snorkel, like a quick study session or quick practice session with snorkels so that they're ready once they hit the water. So a lot of those trips too, we have a tagline so that they're not like free swimming, because a lot of those people will splash. A big rule with shark diving is to swim with sharks, you got to think like a shark. So if you're on the surface uncomfortable and you're splashing around with your hands, making all kinds of noise, well, sharks have been around for 300 million years. They've evolved all that time. They've evolved to respond to splashing or disturbance in the water, and more often than not, they get rewarded by a meal. And so they're very curious and they're evolutionarily designed for this. So if a snorkeler is struggling and splashing in the water, I've seen sharks like just turn towards them and I have to fend them off because they're like, oh, what's that? Is someone injured? Is that like a quick snack? So yeah, I have to be 100% on it. No complacency at all, because that's when things happen. So
It's wild to me that so many people would pick their first experience in the ocean as a shark diving charter. Like, that is very brave.
yep. I tell them one of my go-to phrases when they tell me that, I'm like, man, you're wasting no time. You're just getting right into it.
Yeah,
And
they
then
were like, I'm gonna face my fear of the ocean, of swimming and sharks all in one day. Call it a
that's a
day.
big day. That's a big day. I also say in every briefing, as a heads up, you might not see bottom. Because some people come back on the boat, they're like, I was fine with the sharks, but I freaked out because I couldn't see bottom. It's just open blue. So I fortunately grew up around the ocean. The ocean's been a part of my life since I was born. So one of the things I have to continuously work on is I have to remind myself not everyone was that fortunate. Not everyone is comfortable in the water, comfortable in the ocean. So I every day I have to kind of take a step back and think and do briefings and talk to people and think about how I would feel if this is my first time in the ocean ever. And so that helps a lot with how I interact with the guests.
You mentioned a few times that what you're doing right now is competitive and that it's a little bit tricky to get into.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who that's their dream too, and they want to be a marine biologist, or they want to swim with sharks, or they want to help others swim with sharks?
It's really not about waiting for a job opening and applying and possibly hoping for an interview. It is all about who you know. I actually haven't had a formal interview in like 5 or 6 years because this industry is so narrow and specific that you just build connections with people. I recommend people, there's a lot of volunteering with wildlife rescue. There's internships involved with aquarium and wildlife and all, and rehabilitation. There's Loggerhead Marine Life Center down in Juneau Beach that you can intern or apply for the job there. But as far as the shark diving community here in Florida goes, it's really all about who you know. The more credentials you have, the better shot you have of being hired. I have a captain's license. I have a marine biology degree. I have my dive master and dive instructor. Basically, all of those plus a camera and a website to showcase those photos for guests. And then also just experience on the boat. So it's like, it's not just about how to dive with sharks. How do you help the captain if the boat breaks down? Do you know how to help with oil changes? Do you know how to tie a cleat at the dock a special way if the weather is rough? Or if there's an incoming storm, you have to secure the boat to the dock a certain way to keep it from getting damaged. So there's a lot more. What I try to tell people is, yes, when I'm in the water taking pictures of sharks with people and having fun, that's like 15 to 20% of my job. So a lot of it's maintenance, helping to clean the boat, wax the boat, do oil changes, all of that. So it's about how much you can bring to the table and experience. And then a lot of the people who get involved in this community are originally guests, and then they kind of get their credentials, get their certifications, their captain's license, and then save up for a camera. And then usually one of the boats is like, hey, this is our regular diver who comes out with us every week, and she's good or he's good, and they hire them. So that's how I was able to get involved. That's how several of my friends were able to get involved. So it's not just about looking for job openings on their website. It's about getting out there. It's a bit of an investment because it is a little pricey to go. So it's like maybe once or twice a month, go out on the boat, and invest in yourself.
I'm curious about, since you're sort of in this world of sharks, if you've seen any efforts or organizing that has given you like hope or light at the end of the tunnel in terms of their conservation or taking care of them.
Yeah, so my two favorites that I was directly involved with in Hawaii is Shark Tagger Hawaii. So oceanic white-tip sharks used to be the most prevalent species out there in like all the open oceans, and now, as of today, 97% of them are gone. So they're listed as critically endangered. There's really only like three. There's more than three, but there's three like good solid locations in the world that you can have a really good chance of seeing this animal. Is the Red Sea in Egypt, Cat Island in the Bahamas, like the southeast Bahamas, but only in April and May. And then Kona, Hawaii, where I actually lived for 3 years. Shark Tagger Hawaii studies threshers, oceanic white tips, but mostly the oceanics, and silky sharks. So when I was working offshore for charters, I was using my camera not only to take pictures of people with the animals, but also to submit my shark sightings to Shark Tagger Hawaii, which is a nonprofit organization. And that way they can study the local population. And they actually just recently had like a resighting of an oceanic off of their coast, which is huge because they're in deep, deep water. They usually live in like between 5 and 10,000 feet of water. So finding oceanics out there is not like an everyday thing. It's like a once or twice a week thing. So I would get pictures of them if they had any fishing gear or hooks in their mouth or bullet wounds in their head or like fins wrapped in fishing line or if they were 100% healthy. And so we would also take pictures of the dorsal fin. So the oceanic white tips, the white tip of their dorsal fin is more like spray painted. So Shark Tagger Hawaii has a whole database of like a catalog of their dorsal fins, and they find a match to see if an individual's been seen before. And that's happened several times, which is incredible considering how vast the ocean is out there. And so I was contributing my sightings and my photography for their research. And they're such an incredible organization. They responded to my emails like by the end of the day. They're so good. And yeah, if you check out Shark Tagger Hawaii, their whole website, they have a ton of projects going on, which I love. And as of January 2022, sharks are fully protected in Hawaii. So I was there when it was declared like a shark sanctuary, so no more catching or anything like that. And then the other organization I was involved in, and still am, is Manta Pacific Research Foundation. So Kona, Hawaii is famous for the manta ray population. They have over 300 mantas there. And so I studied their spot pattern. Every manta has an individual spot pattern on their ventral side. And on the Manta Pacific catalog, they have a photo recognition catalog that you can find a matching spot pattern with the one that you saw to figure out its name. So I studied the mantas, there were 100 of them, and then Manta Pacific brought me on board, and we did some research projects like DNA sampling, citizen science, so like people could go out, like tourists could go out on the boat and then submit their photos. Hey, we saw these mantas today, these 5 mantas. And then I would look at the spot patterns and tell Manta Pacific, okay, the 5 mantas seen in this spot tonight are these 5 mantas. So sharks and rays research is fantastic going on in Kona, Hawaii right now. So I was very proud to be a part of both of those organizations.
That's super cool. Really
Yeah.
interesting stuff. I had no idea about these projects, so it's obviously cool to hear about them.
Yeah. And it's like I work in the tourism industry, which I love because it's like I think it's like my passion to take people shark diving and see sharks and mantas and all that, but it is tourism, so being a part of Manta Pacific and Shark Tagger helped me also touch on that scientific side of me. Because I did go to college for marine biology. I loved that I could, go out on a boat, get paid to take people diving with these beautiful animals, but then I could also go home and like help contribute my data and my photos for research that directly benefit these animals.
Across all the different parts of your career so far, have there ever been any major surprises where something was totally not what you thought it was going to be like?
That's a really good question. I would say I've had a couple like surprise encounters with animals out in the like deep blue that I wasn't expecting. One time at like 7 in the morning, I was on another boat in Hawaii and I just jumped in. I was like half asleep and I just jump in the ocean to like wake up. And I always put my mask and fins on just in case like a shark comes up, so I'm ready. And so just so early in the morning, I jump in, and as soon as I like cleared my mask of all the bubbles, like a huge all black sailfish swam like right up to me. So it's like the ocean. One of my favorite things about the ocean is, and I get this question a lot, is like, well, do you ever get sick of diving? Do you ever get sick of it? And my answer is absolutely not, because you never know. Tomorrow I could see something I've never seen before. I had a day in Oahu where they have a lot of like sandbar and Galapagos sharks. And one day my friends and I like booked the boat and we just went for fun. And we had 9 tiger sharks on one dive. I was like, I wasn't expecting this at all. It's like super lucky. That's very rare. Diving does not ever get old because the ocean is just so full of magic.
One question that I ask everybody who comes on is, what is your favorite ocean story or ocean memory?
I have so many. One of my absolute favorites, though, that just came to mind, and it's a lot to do with the people I was with, too. So, 2 of my really good friends were actually my roommates, and they had never seen a hammerhead before. And as captain, usually once you get your captain's license, you're kind of like stuck driving the boat. It's called the captain's curse. So, like, once you get your captain's license, you're pretty much driving like 7 days a week. So it just, this one day I happened to be where we got some like second captain to drive for us that day. So I was the dive leader, and 2 of my roommates were able to join that morning. And this is like peak lemon shark season. So several days before this day, we had 15 to 20 lemon sharks the whole dive. Like, it was amazing. So that's why I invited my roommates. Hey, come out. It's been so good. We're going to get like tons of lemons like we have all week. We get out there, nothing. Gorgeous blue water, not a fish, nothing. And I'm like, what the heck is happening? Like, where'd they all go? We realized that another boat had gotten there a little earlier and took all the lemons over there. So at first you're like, no, like that's disappointing. Like, we get less sharks because another boat has them because they're like attracted to that boat. But it all worked out in the end because we had a great hammerhead shark show up. Just, again, no sharks, no fish, nothing. Gorgeous blue water, and all of a sudden I look down and that great hammerhead comes right up from the deep and stayed with us for like 40 minutes. It happened again with my boyfriend and the boat that he goes out with earlier this summer, and we got a great hammerhead that stuck around. So it's those super rare days, because if you're lucky enough to see a hammerhead out here, it's usually like 2 or 3 seconds as it's swimming by, then it leaves. So to have like a player is just like a gift in itself. Like, you get back on the boat and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. So it's days like that that really stick in my mind.
Well, that's beautiful. And it's fun to think about. It's so funny because people do describe certain ocean animals as playful, and I think it's really sweet. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have a point with this. I just think it's sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Thanks
for
having
sharing
me.
a little bit about you and what you do and how to get into what you do. And I hope that anybody listening, if you want to check out Kaitlyn's photography, you can click or go on Instagram or click the links that I will put in the show notes of this episode.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm happy to share all my stories. So thank you. That was the highlight of my day. That just made my whole day.
Yay! Thanks for listening to another episode of Ocean Stories. Don't forget to follow our social media channels for extra content behind the scenes and to connect with our guests. If you like this episode, please leave a review and let us know what you think. See you soon for more Ocean Stories.